So back to New York City after 2 years, I flew in at, 5:30, 7:30. I was on the roof of the Soho House hanging out with some old friends, and someone bought me a $16 margarita without tip. And the worlds just collided. This is what I used to do. And $16 in Liberia, I could feed 4 people for a month. So I had to do something with my life to justify this, to make this right. I put in this slide because I always forget to talk about my mom. 28 years later, after getting sick, she was miraculously healed when I was in Africa. Doctors weren't sure why, but I came back and I had dinner with her for the first time in a restaurant. So at 30, I wanted to solve every single global problem. And I wanted to reinvent charity at the same time. So I was going to call my charity, and launch, a myriad of campaigns. But I decided to start with the biggest problem that I saw, which was the lack of access to clean water. And there were 1 billion people, 1/6 of the world, that didn't have something I'd always taken for granted, something that was needed for health and education. I used the jerry can just as an image to shift context. For me, it was fuel. I grew up and I would take fuel out to the riding mower and I'd mow for $5 or $10. And for a couple 100 million people, this is how they carry their water. And the water's not clean. So I started traveling around telling the water story. This is in northern Uganda, right on the Sudanese border. 8-hour lines to wait for water. And because there's so many people and not enough access points, on your alternate day, this is where you got your water. You would dig a hole and you'd throw it on your back, and like an animal, you'd take it back and give it to your kids. Kids we'd see on the streets, 10 to 20 to 40 pounds of water on their heads. They should be in school, but they had to fetch the water. This was in Rwanda, guys my age just drinking mud. And we asked, do you boil the water? And about half the time the answer was no. We can't afford the charcoal to clean the water. It's illegal to cut down trees in our country. So the filtration was done like this, pulling out cloth, doubling, tripling dresses. Found this child in Kenya. He was drinking, throwing up, drinking, throwing up. Smuggled the water back in through JFK, and I wanted to have it tested at a lab to see what was in it. Rockefeller University gave me this. A town called Bogeta in Ethiopia, 5,000 people living here. Their biggest struggle was with algae. This is a town called Tashmane, where the older women said 2 children had fallen into this open well and died, where the community buried them and they had no other source of drinking water, so they continued to drink from it. Leeches, a huge problem. Something I'm sure no one in this room has ever had to associate with drinking water. The big ones, easy to get out, but sometimes the little ones will get through the cloth.
It's a leech, right?
Yeah.
Is that what they call it?
Kids and cows drinking from the same sources of water. Schools without water. Here's one. Half of the world's schools right now do not have access to clean water. 50 million schools right now don't have clean water. And this is what it looks like. 1,200 kids, they bring their jerry can. It's my joke that it's the iPod of Africa, although it's not very funny. Toilets are a huge issue. You ask the girls, what can we do for you? And they say, we need toilets. They hit puberty and they stay home because they're ashamed to go to school. And it's backbreaking work, causes severe spinal injury. 80% of all disease is directly related to water, unsafe water, and a lack of sanitation. Lots of nasty things, many you've heard of. Schistosomiasis, maybe you haven't heard of. 210 million people right now have worms crawling around in their body. You can see this child's foot is swollen. His belly was also distended. Worms just attacking the liver. And even health clinics without water. Imagine going to get well at a health clinic. And I toured this place with a doctor, and I was like, how come all the sheets are brown, the blankets? And he took me in and he turned on the taps. Seeing 100 patients a day, and this was their water source. Just a pipe stuck into the Molo River. So the good news is there were solutions. We fund 6 different solutions. Sometimes we can get the community to contribute the labor and dig shallow wells down to about 60 feet. We've done deep wells to 1,200 feet deep. Sometimes we can catch the rain. Sometimes we can catch a mountain spring and use gravity to take it down to the village. And sometimes in parts of Southeast Asia, there's arsenic in the water, and we can purify it, both at the community use and at the personal household use using biosand. Typical well looks like this, costs about $5,000. Community digs, 6 weeks. Concrete culverts are dropped on top of each other. They form the lining of the well, and a pump's put on to protect the aquifer. Deeper wells, you bring in a rig, about 8 people that know how to drill. This is done in about 4 days. If you get a nice well, it's great. It shoots out of the ground under pressure. And as we say, water changes everything. Water brings hope into communities, brings dignity, restores the time. The 40 billion hours are spent in Africa alone just collecting water. Allows kids to go to school, allows moms just to be better moms. So I'm going to take my last 5 minutes just to talk about what it looked like when we tried to solve this problem. So at 30, again, wanted to reinvent charity. I looked around and I didn't see anything else that I wanted to join. And I saw that people my age weren't giving enough. And their main excuse was, I don't know how much of my money is actually going to go into the field. I said, okay, well, let's come up with a way to give away 100% of the money. 100% model. Now, there was a charity called the Robin Hood Foundation in America that had figured this out. The only problem was that was founded by a billionaire. And he said, I'm really rich, so I'll pay for my staff, and 100% of the public's money would go. Now, this was a problem for me because I had a bank account that was negative, about $35,000 in debt. Nightclub promoters are not good savers, as you can imagine. We didn't do very well in the stock market. So this was a crazy idea. Separate the income streams. Go find one group of people, board members, and any way we can find it to pay for the operating costs, and then be clear with the public and always use 100%. We even decided to pay back all credit card fees. If a donor gave $1,000 and we got $960, to go raise that $40 to make the gift whole. And the second thing we would do is we'd prove all of the work. I had this pretty easy. We were funding tangible solutions. So from the very beginning, we said, let's put it all up on Google Earth, and let's teach all of our implementing partners how to use Garmin GPS devices and photos. And this was simple. We would just have complete transparency with every project, and this would give us a great way to monitor the effectiveness in 5 and 10 and in 20 years. And the third thing that was important to me was design. A lot of charities just seem to have really bad websites and bad collateral, like animated blinking GIFs, and I don't know, and they seem to not be able to tell their story simply. So our second employee was our designer, who's now my wife. And we said, let's create beautiful things. Partnerships with company to design sustainable products that were educational. E-cards, where for $20 you could send a Valentine's Day card to someone else, and we'd allow that person to choose where the money went and designate it to a country. Same thing for Easter. We did Hanukkah, we did the holidays. We had an intern come in and say, we got to start figuring out how to spin these facts in a more interesting way. 4,500 kids died today. Who has 4,500 kids? What does that mean? So she shot dirty water in a baby bottle. And we said, wow, this is a powerful image. Let's see if we can get people to show it. New York City gave over $200,000 of free advertising for 2 months. This was our first PSA. It's 60 seconds long, and I wanted to teach New Yorkers what it might be like if they had to go to Central Park Pond. That debuted on American Idol for more than 20 million people in a donated time slot. Started taking my photos from Africa and had a fashion photographer, a friend of my wife's, shoot rich people in the same poses on the Upper East Side. Imagine if these kids going to a $30,000 a year prep school had to carry water. Imagine if our friends in their Brioni suits had to go up to Central Park. We would never allow this. took over exhibitions all over the country, put the photos in front of people, worked with corporations. Saks Fifth Avenue took this on and shot their Mother's Day and Father's Day catalogs completely in water, started selling these $5 bracelets, and then they gave up the windows of Fifth Avenue for 7 days, right after Giorgio Armani, to spread awareness and get people engaged. Then as a company, through their employees and their customers, raised $700,000. Most fun has been working with individuals and seeing people step up and do extraordinary things. 7-year-old kids raising $22,000. Guys climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, trying to raise $1 per foot, blowing away their goals. My favorite is a tax accountant in New York said, what if I could sell 250 bottles of water at $20 to people as they came in for their tax returns? Guys raised $400,000 out of a Midtown office. And then it made sense because he knew how much everybody made and he knew how much they gave to charity. We raised about $500,000 using Twitter. We were the benefactor of the Twestival and have had celebrities support us on Twitter. Have a schools campaign where hundreds of schools have come together to raise hundreds of thousands of dollars to bring clean water and toilets directly to schools in the developing world. And then one of the fun ideas that was mentioned earlier, give up your birthday. When I was 32, I asked for $32 for my 32nd birthday from everyone I could find and raised about $100,000. And then we said, well, every single person has a birthday. 7-year-old kids have birthdays, 81-year-old grandmothers have birthdays. And we put a website together, just launched in beta 4 months ago. Ken Hertz actually raised $84,000 with his 50th birthday. And he said, I love to celebrate my birthday. I love having a big party, and I love the attention. I love the food. But this year, I'm giving my birthday up. And he asked everyone for donations. In 4 months, the site has raised $1.3 million.